There is a grain with more protein than modern wheat, more antioxidants than most vegetables, and more minerals than the fortified cereals in supermarkets. It fed the first civilizations on Earth. It fueled the bodies that built the earliest cities. For thousands of years, it was the most important food humans ever cultivated. Then we abandoned it, not because it failed, not because something better came along. We buried it because it did not fit the economics of empire. And today, as our food grows weaker and less resilient, the loss of this grain is costing us more than we realize. Before industrial agriculture rewrote the rules of farming, there was a grain that needed no modification. It grew in soils too poor for modern crops. It survived droughts that would wither hybrid varieties. It delivered more nutrition per kernel than anything we mass-produce today. This was not a forgotten vegetable or an obscure legume. This was wheat, the original wheat, the ancestor of every loaf of bread, every bowl of pasta, every cracker on your shelf. But here is what they do not teach you. The wheat we eat today is not the same plant our ancestors cultivated. Modern wheat has been hybridized, crossbred, and genetically restructured so many times that it barely resembles its origin. What we lost in that transformation was not just heritage. It was nutrition. It was resilience. It was a grain that asked for almost nothing and gave back almost everything. So why did we walk away from perfection? And who decided that efficiency mattered more than health? This is einkorn. The name means one grain in German, a reference to the single kernel that grows on each spikelet of the plant. Einkorn is not just old wheat, it is the oldest wheat. Genetic analysis traces its domestication to the Karakaddag Mountains of southeastern Turkey more than 10,000 years ago. This was the Fertile Crescent, the birthplace of agriculture itself. And einkorn was there at the beginning. When early humans stopped wandering and started planting, einkorn was among the first seeds they placed in the ground. They chose it for reasons that still hold true today. It germinated reliably. It stored for years without spoiling. It provided dense, sustained energy in a compact kernel. Archaeological sites across the Levant, the Balkans, and Central Europe reveal einkorn in ancient storage jars, grinding stones, and burial offerings. This was not animal feed. This was sacred, foundational, the grain that made civilization possible. And what grew inside each seed would reshape human life more than any plant before it. Before einkorn, humans followed food. They tracked herds. They gathered wild plants. They moved with the seasons because staying still meant starvation. Einkorn changed that equation. A single planting in spring meant a guaranteed harvest in autumn. A sealed jar of grain meant food through winter. For the first time in human history, people could stay in one place and survive. Villages formed around einkorn fields. Families built permanent shelters. Populations grew. The rhythms of planting and harvest replaced the rhythms of migration. Entire social structures emerged from the security of stored grain. The kernel's tough outer hull protected it from rot, insects, and moisture. Properly dried einkorn lasted years. Archaeologists have found edible grains in sites abandoned for millennia. That durability was not a convenience. It was survival insurance. Communities that mastered einkorn cultivation expanded across river valleys and mountain slopes. They traded surplus grain for tools, livestock, and alliances. The crop did not just feed people, it built the framework of society itself. And the grain that made this possible had strengths that modern wheat has lost entirely. Modern bread wheat carries 42 chromosomes. It is the result of thousands of years of crossbreeding, a genetic patchwork designed for yield and ease of processing. Einkorn carries only 14 chromosomes. It has a simple ancient genome that has remained virtually unchanged for 10,000 years. That simplicity is its strength. Einkorn thrives in drought conditions that devastate modern wheat. It prospers in poor, rocky soils where hybrid varieties starve. It grows at high altitudes where cold and wind destroy commercial crops. Farmers in the mountains of Provence, the highlands of Turkey, and the Alps of northern Italy kept it alive precisely because it survived, where nothing else would. The plant resists many common wheat diseases. Its tough hull protects the grain from pests that plague softer modern kernels. It requires no pesticides, no fungicides, no chemical intervention to reach harvest. Where industrial agriculture demands perfect conditions, einkorn adapts. It bends without breaking. It produces less per acre, but loses almost nothing to disease, drought, or disaster. And what it lacks in volume, it more than compensates for in what actually matters. Einkorn delivers between 18 to 24% protein. Modern wheat averages 10 to 14%. That difference is not marginal. It is transformational. The grain contains up to 4 times more lutein than common wheat, a powerful antioxidant that protects eyes, skin, and cardiovascular tissue. It carries higher concentrations of zinc, iron, phosphorus, and potassium. It provides B vitamins in quantities that modern wheat cannot match. But the most significant difference lies in its gluten structure. Einkorn contains gluten, in a simpler, more ancient form. Studies suggest that many people who struggle with modern wheat digest einkorn without the same inflammatory response. The proteins are shorter, less aggressive, and easier for the human gut to process. This was the grain that fueled pyramid builders, early Bronze Age traders, and mountain communities through brutal winters. Not empty calories, not processed starch. Real, dense, functional nutrition in every handful. For thousands of years, humans thrived on einkorn without supplements, without fortification, without nutritional science. The grain itself was enough. So if einkorn fed everyone so well, why did we trade it for something worse? If you want more forgotten histories like this one, consider subscribing to keep these stories alive. The answer is yield. Einkorn produces roughly half the grain per acre of modern hybrid wheat. Each kernel is smaller. Each spikelet holds only one seed. The hull clings tightly to the grain, making milling slow and labor-intensive. For small communities growing food for themselves, none of that mattered. But for empires collecting taxes in grain, for merchants shipping wheat across seas, for landlords measuring profit by the bushel, einkorn was inefficient. As populations exploded and cities demanded more bread, farmers were pushed toward higher-yielding varieties. Emmer wheat appeared first, a hybrid with larger seeds. Then came spelt, then durum, then the bread wheat that dominates the world today. Each generation of wheat traded nutrition for volume, resilience for softness, strength for speed. The crops that replaced einkorn were easier to mill, faster to harvest, and more profitable to sell. They fed more people with less land. But they also fed them worse. The nutritional density dropped with every hybridization. The gluten became more complex. The dependence on fertilizers and pesticides grew. Einkorn did not die. It was pushed aside, deemed primitive, forgotten in the margins while empires built their bread supply on compromise. The forgotten grain returning for the future. But einkorn survived. In the mountains of Turkey, in isolated Italian villages, in small French farms where tradition outweighed trends, the original wheat kept growing. Now scientists are paying attention again. Researchers in Europe and North America are studying einkorn for its climate resilience, its nutritional profile, and its potential to feed a world facing soil depletion and rising temperatures. Farmers seeking alternatives to chemical-dependent agriculture are planting it in test plots and finding it thrives where modern wheat fails. Health. conscious consumers are discovering einkorn flour, einkorn pasta, and einkorn bread. They report easier digestion, sustained energy, and flavors that modern wheat cannot replicate. A nutty, rich, almost buttery taste that comes from density, not additives. The same qualities that made einkorn worthless to industrial economies now make it invaluable for survival. It grows without synthetic inputs. It resists drought. It nourishes deeply. It asks for almost nothing and gives back what no hybrid can. They buried it because it did not scale. They dismissed it because it did not profit. But the grain that built the first civilizations may be the grain that sustains the last. The knowledge never disappeared. It simply waited for the world to remember.